Наш следующий доклад будет на английском. Please meet Ricardo Mota. He is CTO.
Yes, correct.
CTO in a financial startup from Hong Kong, and he will tell us about one day in a life financial transaction and how AI can help us in our endeavors.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sergey, for the introduction. So yeah, I'm here to talk to you about a day in the life of a financial transaction and how AI is helping us bring intelligence to that data. First, a bit about myself. My name is Ricardo Mota. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Gini, a fintech startup based in Hong Kong. And my career has taken me many places, many different roles, from a rocket scientist in Lisbon, Portugal, to now a CTO in Hong Kong. And hopefully my story will help you, and you'll take something from this session today. So again, a day in the life of a financial transaction. And I want you to leave here today with 3 key takeaways. So first, financial data isn't intelligent, right? I'll show you how. It doesn't have to be. That's what we're doing at Gini. That's what we're working on, and hopefully that will make sense for you. And then, third key, and maybe the most important one: why you should care. Why is that important to you? But before I go into that, I would like to understand more about you. So maybe you can tell me how many of you have your banking app on your phone. All right, that's almost everyone here, which is good. Means that you're already finding some of these problems, I guess, that I'll cover. And how many of you have ever used a PFM app or a personal finance management app? Okay, that's around half of you. So that means that you're familiar with this, which is great. Great. So, how many of you heard of Gini before? That's okay. That's okay.
No hard feelings.
No hard feelings, of course. Hopefully, by the end of today, you'll be able to answer differently to that question. That's one of my goals. So, Gini, what is our mission? Why did we, start a company? Why we're working so hard on this? So our mission is really to empower everyone, every single one of you, to be great at managing your finances. And why? Why did we start off with this goal? Why was that important? So I think it started from a kind of personal need to understand where our own money was going, realizing at the end of the month, I think I should have a different balance than I have there. What's going on here? And talking to our friends and colleagues and family and realizing we're not alone, right? This problem, a lot of people have the same problem, at least at some point in their life. And sometimes talking about personal finance is not easy, right? It's very private. It's not something necessarily all our parents talk to us when we're growing up. So we thought, okay, we have a problem here. A lot of people are sharing the same problem. There must be someone really smart working on the solution. So we turned to the authority in this space, like the big financial institutions, the big banks of the world, and what are they doing to help us with this problem? And we realized they're not doing much. It was not really working for us. So one reason why is that data is very siloed. So what do I mean by this? Most of us have one main bank account where we keep our savings, but then we might have another bank account with a credit card because it gives us discounts or miles to travel. And that data is siloed. So the 2 data sets, they cannot talk to each other. So no single institution has really a full picture of your financial life and your financial actions. The raw data is confusing. So again, this comes the part of the unintelligent part that I'm going to tell you about later. And there are apps like intelligence. Of course, if you don't have all the data is siloed. If the data itself is not very intelligent, then how can you as a user get the most out of it, right? It's almost impossible. And then the user experience is really not up to par with what we used to these days, with Google Maps or Uber or Facebook or Instagram. So we believe, at Gini, we believe we could do better. And that's what we hope we have built better. And personally myself, I from all my years of experience with technology, from anywhere from IoT to cybersecurity to deep learning and self-driving cars, and now in the financial space, there is so much out there these days that we can leverage to make sense of this data, to give it intelligence, and then power and give that value back to our users. So that's what we've been doing with Gini. We've been growing in Hong Kong in the last 2 years. And earlier this year, we started our global expansion. So started growing into other markets, primarily focusing on the Southeast Asian market, like Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia. I'll be honest with you today, Russia is still a bit early for us. We haven't focused too much in Russia, but if you're curious, you can go and download Gini today in the app stores and let me know what you find. If you want to be an early user, more than happy to support you on that. So this is like a short intro to Gini, but I'm really here to talk to you about a day in the life of a financial transaction. And these three key takeaways. Financial data isn't intelligent, it doesn't have to be, and why you should care. So I really start with the first part. Financial data isn't intelligent. And it really starts with a transaction. What is a financial transaction? How is it born? What does that mean? Right? It means every day when you go about your lives and you buy dinner or go to the grocery shop, or you send money to a family or friend, or you get money out of the ATM machine, you create a financial transaction, right, that your bank represents in some shape or form. So let's maybe start with this. I hope it's familiar to some of you.
Wrong city, dude.
Wrong city?
Yeah. It's more like Moscow.
Moscow took me for this.
Okay, sorry about that. But hopefully you can relate and walk me through a bit on this today. So for me, this is Piateroshka. I hope I'm saying that right at least.
Yeah.
Great. So you go to Piateroshka maybe to get your dinner, or if you're in Moscow, maybe to get your dinner. And this is kind of what your bank might have about it, right? So very simple data set. You have a description, you have an amount, in this case 250. That minus represents expense. You have a date, no timestamp. There's no real actual time where you made that transaction, typically just a date. A merchant category code, which we found out through experience not very useful, and a currency, in this case rubles. But I want you to focus on that part there, the description, Alpha X5 retail. And what does that mean, right? You might look at that in your bank statement. You might think, did I spend money on Alpha X5 retail? I'm pretty sure I didn't. What is this? And the reason why this is your Piateroshka transaction is because Piateroshka is owned by the X5 retail group, which is in turn owned by the Alpha consortium. So you might see something like this in your bank statement and think, I didn't spend that money. I didn't do that. You call your bank, try to find out. We all know that experience is not pleasant, trying to call your bank and going through that call center experience. So that's why we figure out, we can do better. This is how it can even look like in an example of an application, a typical banking app. Not very intelligent, let's say. All right, so Gini, we believe we could do better, and this is where a part comes in of financial data is intelligent. It doesn't have to be. So we're trying to do better. So just like Neo, we're trying to learn fast from each transaction that comes into our system and be able to move that into our users. Right, just like Neo tried to learn JavaScript basics really quickly, we try to understand as much as we can from that transaction as it comes through our systems to be able to power this intelligence back to our users. So we look at it in three different contexts. So we look at first in isolation, so just that little JSON object that you saw before. We then look at it in the context of other transactions, what data came in before and after, that we can understand the patterns and we can recognize and see insights into it. And finally, we look into the context of the user's account. So what other bank accounts the user might have, what other action the user might have taken, that means that we need to do something about this transaction, or there's something we should be making sense of and powering that back to the user. So let me start by talking about what we do when we look at a transaction in isolation. So again, this is what we have to work with. And first thing we try to do when we look at it is we try to find what is the category of that transaction. Right? Very simple, but already allows you to understand, okay, I didn't just spend 250 rubles in nothing. I am able to categorize that into one of a few buckets. So Depends on market, depends on cultural, but typically categories span between 10 and 20 in different markets. So our first goal is how can we see where is that Piotroszka transaction in your categories. So how we do that? We started with a very naive based approach, just setting a set of rules, right? If we see certain data in a string, then we assign that, okay, that means it's groceries. That was kind of okay. It took us, 80%, 90% accuracy, but it's not very scalable. As you might imagine, as you start managing these large data sets of rules, your process starts to take longer, right? So you have a performance hit every time you grow the rules. But okay, we can engineer for performance. We can try to reduce that latency, but you start also having issues with quality, right? So you start having false positives and really a subpar experience. And this is where we start looking into machine learning, AI, and specifically deep learning, creating models that are able to, classifiers. They're able to take a transaction and put it in one of these buckets for categories. So that's pretty much what happens. Our Piotroszka transaction comes in, goes through our categorization engine, our categorization models, and spits out something like this. Very simple category to groceries. But this is not good enough, right? You cannot really take control of your finances just with this. So what we do next, we try to find the merchant of this transaction. So merchant is a much more interesting attribute to find because you can also figure out, okay, I'm not only spending 250 rubles in groceries, but I'm spending on a specific merchant, a specific chain that provides me that. Is there any other chain that can give me maybe the same, but for less money? Can I save some money, right? It also gives you insight into where are you spending your money in the geographical location that you're spending your money. So we found we wanted to do this. So how do we do this? It turns out finding a merchant to a transaction is a very hard problem. It's something that I believe no one has done really well yet. So we start thinking, how do we solve this problem? In this day and age, you really want to start with creating a deep learning model, an AI-powered model that is able to figure out, okay, a transaction comes in, I have this data set of merchants, and I'm able to do the matching. The problem is that to create these models, you really need a good set of labeled data. So we set out looking for that. It turns out it doesn't exist. There's no good public data set of merchants to transactions. There's a lot of data set about merchants itself. Google, Foursquare, a lot of companies provide these data sets, through an API even. But there's no connection between the transaction and the merchant. I believe that's due to a few things. One of them, financial data is not really standardized. There's not an international standard of how banks and financial institutions should represent that financial data. Each bank kind of represents in its own way, same abstractions, same concepts, but represented differently. So it's really hard for a public model to be able to, the data set, to be able to provide that. And then the merchant side of things, merchants, they start and they close doors almost every day. So it's hard to keep something that continuously is able to provide value. So what do we do as a small startup with little resources, no public data set available? We go out and create our own. Like we go out, try to create that labeled data set. It's a very daunting effort to take, I might say, but we thought someone needs to do this, someone needs to kickstart this, so that's why we done. How do we do it? So we use a combination of hits or human intelligence tasks and machine learning techniques to be able to kickstart this model, to have a data set that is able to start the model and then continuously improve it, continuously train it with more data, and also looking at metrics like quality or even quantity. So we look at metrics, how many transactions are we able to assign a merchant with a certain confidence? What is the quality? What is that confidence value? So we do this and we, through it, continuously improve our models. So we have a very interesting infrastructure where we're taking data on a daily basis from interactions from our users. We're taking data from these human intelligence tasks and also public data available of merchants, and we continuously retrain our models on a nightly basis and automatically deploy them. So this is a very interesting way, and unfortunately I don't have really time to go into depth into how we're doing this internally, but if you're interested, please come find me after the talk. I'm more than happy to go into detail of how we actually build this, how do we do this in a continuous way with quality, in an automated way as well. All right, so our Piotroszka transaction comes in through and passes through our merchantizer models, which merchantizer is an internal term we have to assign a merchant to a transaction, and comes out something like this. So we have now a category as we had before, and now we have a merchant set where we have IDs and confidence values to that merchant. And we're then able to map that to our merchant data set, where we have things like the name, both in English and in Russian. We have a logo. So you might think, why is the logo important? So as you walk through a supermarket and you see the brand, it's everywhere, right? And as you open your banking app or your Gini app, for example, you see that logo and you create that immediate connection to it, and you understand, okay, yeah, that's where I spend the money. I'm okay. So that's why these things are important for us. So coordinates, again, really interesting to see where the merchant itself is located, the one that you actually used, because we're able to see, is there any alternative supermarket that you can go that is within a radius that you're going to save money versus having to drive 20 or 30 kilometers and end up spending more. So we're trying to understand all of these differences and empowering these use cases back to our users. So, and a few other things like the address and website, which also again allows us to power really interesting use cases for our customers. Much more than I could put on the screen. Again, I'm happy to go over it in detail after if you want. So we looked at the transaction isolation. We found a category and found a merchant. Now we want to look at it in the context of other transactions. So again, this is what we have, and we started looking at this data across time, right? You start putting it in front of us and seeing, okay, this is actually an interesting pattern here, right? What we notice is that this is a very typical time series data, right? And time series data happens, and there's use cases all over the world. Everything from sensor data to financial markets and stock prices. And because of that, there's so much research, so much investment being put into analyzing this data and getting intelligence from it. So we're able to leverage a lot of those public libraries and open source libraries that are able to leverage and to take analyzing this data. And what we found is that we're able to identify very interesting things, like your salary. So we're able to see your recurring income, not just if it's always the same value, but also if that changes over time, right? Let's say you might have a fixed salary and then a percentage that depends on your performance or overtime. So we're able to identify that and power that to the user. We're able to see things like utility bills, electricity, water, gas, and how does that change over time, over months, maybe over seasons? And what does that mean for you as a user, for your financial life? How can you make changes that is going to have a good impact in the long run? Things like subscriptions, Netflix, Spotify, I'm sure there's others more relevant to you. One interesting thing about subscriptions is when we first launched this feature, a lot of our users came back to us and said, I didn't even know I was paying for this, right? They were starting to discover these subscriptions that were sneakily put on to them. So they're able to cancel this and save money through it. And obviously, much more than I could go over now into detail. So we take our Piotroszka transaction, we go through it, our time series models, and we get something like this, right? So we have a probability of it being a salary transaction, of course, very low. Being a subscription, again, very low. But interesting enough, we have an average spend. So how much am I spending on average on this grocery chain, right? What does that mean? Does that mean I'm going in a positive trend or a negative trend? How can we notice that and then inform our users about it? So we've looked into isolation, again, category merchant. We've looked into other transactions, time series data analysis, looking at things like patterns in recurring data. And now we want to look into the whole user's account, different bank accounts, different actions that the user might have done. And what we found is that we really started by asking these questions. Is this transaction actionable? Right? We're seeing transactions coming in which might be a late credit card payment fee, right? as Gini, we could power to users like, maybe you should call your bank and have them waive that fee. A lot of banks, if you call them and say, look, I just late today, can you waive this fee for me? A lot of banks do that. Can I create an alarm for you that will prevent you from missing this in the future, right? We actually already have these alarms, but maybe the user is missing it. So is there something we can do for that specific user that will enable to do that? One example we're about to roll out is WhatsApp. So we're able to send you WhatsApps when you have some of these events that you don't want to incur on fees, because some of our users said WhatsApp is a more engaging way to talk to me, right? The push notifications are starting to lose a lot of the effectiveness. We think about, should the other transactions come together with this one? So a typical pattern we saw is users get their salary and then they do transfers out, maybe to an investment account, maybe to a savings account. So we see this pattern over time, and then comes a new salary transaction and it doesn't happen. Why is that the case, right? Should we tell the user, do you have any, did you forget? Is that something you need to do here? So this is a few use cases we do. So again, we go through it. Pietroszka comes in, goes through our models in terms of the user's account, and looks at things like, what is the probability of being a fraudulent transaction? So this is an interesting use case. I'll tell a bit more about later. But it's another thing we look into. Is the credit card being paid for this specific account? So now you can see the original transaction, and you can see the intelligence that at Gini we brought it. There's things like category, merchant, able to understand not just where you're spending your money in terms of these buckets, but also which specific merchant company you're spending your money on, and what alternatives there might be for your spend. Things like your salary and how does that change over time, your subscriptions, how much am I spending on average on different merchants, and things that, is this a fraudulent transaction or not? So that's kind of the part of the financial data is intelligent. It doesn't have to be, and this is what we're doing about it. So this is like a screenshot of our app, part of the ways we're trying to bring that intelligence back to you. So I just wanted to make a quick point here. So obviously, this is how I was able to optimize this representation of data for this presentation here for you today. But it's obviously not how we represent the data internally at Gini, right? We have many different data sets, many different databases that we build, optimized for the use cases. Some of them are optimized for API consumption, right? For a low latency global API that we serve to customers all over the world. Other data sets are optimized for this machine learning process, the training that happens overnight and that gets deployed. Other data sets are pushed into our data lake for data analytics and business intelligence, and able to power a lot of our decisions. So again, I don't have enough time to go into depth into this. This will be a whole talk in itself. But if you're interested, please come find me after the talk. More than happy to go into detail of how we do this, how we build this, what is the infrastructure behind it. I'm very, very interested and very happy to go over this with you. So we've gone through the two first takeaways. Financial data isn't intelligent. It doesn't have to be. Now, I think the most important one, why you should care. Why is this important to you? Have you ever felt this? Have you ever shared this at some point in your life? I know I did. Thank you. Even using Gini, sometimes I feel like there's still something I'm not understanding. Like, for example, when I come and travel to Vladivostok, and I am using maybe more cash than I usually do, and then I have this I have this gap of what's happening, right? And then I take this back into my team, and we brainstorm on how can we improve the product, how can we improve Gini to keep satisfying these concerns. So it's an ongoing process. Obviously, this is not we haven't fixed any. We're not done pretty much. So another takeaway is tools like Gini allow you to take control of your finances, and it's not just Gini. I'll be honest with you. There's other companies, great companies around the world, working on very similar problems, and they're doing great things. I really believe this. It really allows you to take control of your finances and to really make better decisions, make better habits that you can then use that to improve, to improve your life. So another thing is that it frees your time. So as you create this relationship with tools like Gini, and you start getting notifications whenever you have to do something, you're like, okay, that's good, thanks, and then you go about your life, and then maybe you're going out and then you check, okay, quick peek, okay, my finances are in good shape. And as time goes on, you create this trust relationship that you know that this tool is going to be there to tell you when you have to do something, or it's going to be there when you want to just get a reassurance, or when you want to make a big decision. So it's not easy to create these relationships, but this is what we're trying to do through technology and through AI, and being able to free the user's time by doing this. So we met with a lot of users, especially initially, and we still do, and a lot of them spend hours on the weekend or every other month going through spreadsheets and trying to understand this and exporting data from all the different places, and it's really time consuming. And these are power users, but they of course they prefer to do something else with their time. So this is another thing that tools like this really help you. But I want to also tell you a bit of a personal story that happened to me. So this is a little story about my brother-in-law suit. So imagine this, I'm a few days before getting married, and I'm talking to my brother-in-law, or my soon-to-be brother-in-law, I should say. And we're understanding he has like an old suit that doesn't really fit well. We're like, okay, let's go out and buy a suit together, right? Like, let's make that experience of like really you feeling great in your suit on that day, and we went and we had a great time, picking out the shoes and the socks and all that. And then it comes the time to pay for the suit. So to give a bit of context, I live in Hong Kong. I've been living there for almost 7 years now, but I was in Poland. So my wife is from Poland, so we decided to get married there. So I'm abroad making a purchase. So I give the card to the lady. She tries and says, "Oh, it's not working," and gives me a little paper in Polish, and supposedly said it's rejected or something. I'm like, okay, can you please try again? A lot of these transactions, sometimes they don't work the first time. So she tries again, the same thing, still doesn't work. I'm like, okay, so I have another credit card from another bank. Can you try this one? She tries, unfortunately, the same thing. And then my final credit card, the one that I almost never use just for kind of emergencies, I try, still doesn't work, right? So I'm like, okay, how do I do this now? So long story short, we ended up having to go to an ATM and do multiple withdrawals to kind of get to that value, because when you're abroad, there's limits on withdrawals. Anyway, we solved that, and I was about to get married, so I had a lot of stuff in my head. I carry on with my day. And the funny thing is that a few hours later, Gini sends me a notification, right? We've detected a possible fraudulent transaction. Please have a look and see if you need to contact your banks. And I was very surprised. So I looked at it and I realized I had been charged 4 times for that suit. And so I didn't know what to do. So I kind of called my main bank account, the one I tried twice, and they had no idea, right? They had no idea because they cannot see the whole picture. Right? Gini was able to see, okay, there's one transaction, or better yet, 4 transactions with the same amount in the same day with the same merchant, because we're able to identify that. And that's not a typical behavior for a human to do. So there might be something wrong here. Go and have a look. So I was able to, start this process with the different banks. They have a way to kind of talk to each other and kind of assign a single case to this and make sure that I was not charged for this. But I was told that if sometimes you wait too long, that's not the case. It's really hard, and you might incur on these charges. So hopefully, leaving you with a bit of a personal story on this one. Sorry about that. Okay. So again, financial data is intelligent. It doesn't have to be why you should care. But I really believe this is just the beginning, right? We're really in the early days of this. We believe at Gini we can make everyone great at managing their finances. I personally believe this is one of the big problems of our time right now, right? We're 7 billion people in this world, and a big percentage of that, they're coming into their first bank account or their first interaction with personal finances ever, maybe even in their families. Never in their families they had this preoccupation. Right? They're having interactions with finances very differently from what we or our parents had. They don't have these big banks that have offices, they have maybe these mobile wallets, and this is their first interaction with this data. There's very little education being done, both in the schools or at home. Again, it's a hard topic to talk to with your family and friends, and that means that there's so much to do. There's so much value we can do to the world if we are just a bit better at managing our finances. So, imagine this. Imagine if we could just change the world a little bit, just like 5% of us, and be a little bit better at spending our money every day. Imagine how much money that would free in the macro sense for the whole population, right? How much we could help others with donations or charity, or even start companies, right? Entrepreneurship, and take that money and create jobs and create amazing products for ourselves, or even just having fun with our friends and family. So if this is the kind of mission, the kind of thing you might be passionate about, we're hiring. So we're growing quite rapidly in Hong Kong. So if you're interested, please do come and talk to me and message me. We have a lot of open positions, both in Hong Kong and remote. And I think remote is actually a very interesting point here for Vladivostok, because we've worked with developers from Russia before, but they were actually in the Moscow time zone. So you can coordinate that, but it's a bit of a challenge. In Vladivostok, we're 2 hours difference from Hong Kong. So it really solves a lot of these remote work type problems. Everything from all slices of the stack in software engineering, data science, user experience and interface, and even product management. So we have a really cool office. We have our in-house chef cooks for us home cooked meals every day. We have weekly sharing sessions very similar to this one about different topics. We have monthly retrospectives and team events. Even a conference budget to come to events just like this and share with and learn from your peers, learn from industry leaders, and bring that learning back into Gini and then to our customers. This is my personal email, so feel free to email me. I read all my emails, and if you have any idea, here's our careers website. I'll be honest with you, we grow probably faster than we can update this careers website, because we're really focusing on the problems of our customers. So if you don't find anything there that fits your needs, please do still message me. If you're passionate about this, and if you really want to make a change and add value, we can create a role for you. We've done that in the past. So thank you, and sorry, I had some notes there, but I cannot see. Спасибо. I would just like one more thing to thank the Skokovo Foundation for inviting me here today to be here in the forum. It's been my pleasure to come to Vladivostok and the Russky Islands to meet you and to share my story with you, and hopefully you take some from this talk with you today. Thank you.
Can we speak?